Hi, this is Bob Scully, and welcome to another edition of The World Show, Free Markets, the Walter Series. You want to send your son or daughter to study business or economics in a good school. After all, you're paying for it, so you're looking around, you're asking around, and people tell you, well, don't miss Harvard Business School, it's the best. Someone else says, no, Wharton School. And then someone else says, no, the London School of Economics. In fact, if you want to send your son or daughter to the university that is drawing the most attention worldwide right now because it has integrated entrepreneurial principles into its curriculum, you want to send your child to Francisco Marroquin University in Guatemala. Here's the rector, Gabriel Calzada. Gabriel Calzada, you are the rector of an important Latin American university, but you're the opposite of an old fogey, you know, with glasses and a tweed jacket. You're very young and dynamic, and the university itself is very dynamic. It's called Francisco Marroquin. It's in Guatemala. What does it do?
Hello, Bob. The university, it's a university that was created 46 years ago to spread the ideas of liberty, and or to have a conversation about the importance of liberty in all aspects of life. Mm-hmm. The mission of the university is to teach and disseminate the ethical, the legal, and the economic ideas of society for free and responsible persons. So what we do is what our mission expects us to do. This is to have different schools, like a university. It looks like a university. It looks like a beautiful university.
And it is. It gives diplomas.
And it is. We give diplomas, but this is not our mission. Our mission is to have this ongoing conversation about liberty. And yes, our students come to our university because the diploma is very valued in society. But I think slowly our different model is perceived as something of something that has a value in itself, and also the fact that people are going to be immersed in a conversation about liberty and will get skills and, around that ideas, will know how free market works and why freedom and free markets are important for a flourishing society and for success, your own success in life too.
Yes, of course. And one thing that's fascinating, it was started by an entrepreneur, Manuel Ayau, who was a local entrepreneur who realized that economic education was not being provided for students. They knew about theology, history, and so forth, but not about basic economics. And he found the money to do it.
Yes, in fact, one day he asked himself a question that was, why is Guatemala poor? And he realized he couldn't answer this, and he had economics. He studied engineering, but he had economics, some courses, and he couldn't answer. He called his friends, hey, I have this stupid question. Can you answer this question? Why is Guatemala poor? And nobody could answer this question. So he realized the education, the economic education was very bad everywhere, basically. And they started educating themselves. And they came to the conclusion, counterintuitive initially, that the problem was liberty. There was not enough, well, the problem was that they didn't have enough liberty, so that they needed more liberty. So slowly they dedicated their lives. Those young entrepreneurs decided we have to create a different university that in fact is a very different university from other universities, not only because of the mission, but also because the way it's run, it's more like a free market organization itself, like a for-profit. It is a non-profit, but it works as if it is a for-profit. And in the educational industry, so to speak, it's a very rare type of organization.
And yet the quality is very high. It was voted #1 in the world for its economics department. I saw the top 50 economic departments in the world came up first. It beat, you know, huge old institutions, so they're doing something right.
Well, the fact that it's always subjective if you are #1 or not, but the fact that some people think about having us in the top 10 in education, in the education of free market economics or classic economics, that is very important for a small university, 3,000 students like us in Guatemala. To be considered as one of the top universities in the teaching of economics is really very important. But all our department works like companies, like they have to create value. Everyone, every department has to have its own budget, has to show that they are creating value, and the educational departments and the non-educational departments too. Every student has to learn about free markets, and the economic department has been doing like other departments, but they have been doing a very good job to not only teach good economics, but to have many activities around the everyday life of a student, where you get in touch with the results of free markets and also the harming results of interventionism.
So you can, your stock can go up or down. They give you, you know,
well, for example, the price. Well, we don't have stocks, but the prices of the rooms, for example, the deans have to rent the rooms. They don't.
Okay.
They are not lining up in front of my office, knocking at the door and saying, "Hey, Gabriel, since we are good friends and we went yesterday to this party, can you give me this room? That is the best room." No, they have to go to a market. We have internal prices, internal market, and if the demand of certain type of rooms at certain hours is high, guess what? Price goes up.
It's like the restaurant in Paris in front of the stock exchange, where you can bid on your dish.
Yeah.
And so if they're short of steak, the price goes up and so forth. It's very smart.
I have to think about that.
No, yeah, go to the restaurant. It really exists. And you're opening in Madrid too. That tells us something, because I think originally Spanish universities always looked down on Latin American universities. They were snobbish about it. But this one, Francisco Marroquin, has impressed people so much. You will have a campus in downtown Madrid.
Yes, the campus in downtown Madrid, I think, is going to be like taking the model that has revolutionized the way education is provided in Guatemala to Europe, and we think there are good chances that it will become a platform for good scholarship on the market, to be done from our university, and also to show that there is a possibility of uniting the way we teach the ideas of liberty, the way we teach, and the content. Because one thing that we also do is we try to train our professors in giving liberty to the students, in giving responsibility to the students, so the students are responsible of their own education. And this has been a very successful experiment to unite the way we teach and what we teach, and the liberty and responsibility come together in these two senses in the classroom.
And one thing that impresses me a lot, this grew and developed in a part of the world where authoritarian governments are often the rule, with military regimes and so on. They don't like liberty at all. They're the opposite. But they let you grow, because Guatemala has had its upheavals, like all the Central American countries. But they didn't close you down. They didn't object.
Well, when the university started, Manuel Ayao was the founder and the first president. He had to go to work very often, changing cars in the middle of the town, the city, because they were afraid of being kidnapped or being attacked. In the first ceremony of the university, in the inaugural ceremony, he had a bulletproof jacket.
Holy cow.
So and there was a lot of violence at that point. It is not the case today anymore. And today the prestige of the university is so high that even the leftist ideologues send their students to our university.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So like the Sandinistas and the Chavistas and so on?
Well,
the equivalent.
Yeah, the equivalent.
Guatemalan
yes,
equivalent.
Exactly.
And you've never had trouble with the military people or whatever, from the other side? They have never oppressed you? Or?
Well, I think everyone who is against liberty has attempted at one point or another, from the right and from the left, to see if they could shut down UFM. Also, the U.S. Embassy at one point and tried to harm UFM and see if they could perhaps not close it down, but to say enough bad things about the university that would diminish its value or its credibility.
It didn't work.
It didn't work,
That's wonderful.
Fortunately.
And do the students, like the faculty, the professors, is it made up of former students of UFM? Because you've been there now enough years for that.
Many are former students, but we also have international professors. Professors have been trained in other countries, and they love what we're doing, and they come as a visiting professor first, and then after a while they ask if there is a space for them, and place for them, and we hire quite a lot of international professors. We also, since we are very flexible, we also hire professors for one trimester every year or for one semester every year, and this allows us to have many professors from different parts of the world.
And I'm told that it's a very handsome campus, that even though it's in downtown Guatemala City, you feel like you're in the tropical forest.
Yeah, that's something magical, because you're in downtown Guatemala, you're driving in downtown Guatemala, you enter the campus, you're in the international part of the city. You enter the campus and suddenly you're in this beautiful garden that I remember the first time I went as a visiting professor some 11 years ago. I was so impressed by the atmosphere. Then going back to Spain in the plane, I wrote an article that the title was "The Oasis of Liberty," and it was meant to be an oasis in two ways, in physical sense, but also in academic sense. It's an oasis, an academic oasis,
and people
with no tenure. Academic oasis with no tenure.
No tenure. Yes. You don't provide tenure for professors?
No. We think tenure, among other rules or norms, get usually the professor to slow down in their teaching abilities and their teaching performance.
You're not alone in believing that. Yeah. In many places, that's the case.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
it's too much job security.
Yeah. Well, one of the jokes of professors at the beginning of every semester around the world, in the U.S. or in Europe, is, "Oh, how many courses do you have?" "I have 2 courses." "Oh, that many?" So because professors want to be away of the classroom, because all the incentives are out of the classroom.
To publish.
So we have reversed this.
Course.
Our incentive is to get good lectures, also to research, but we don't put the incentives in such a way that the professor wants to go away of the student.
And you have students of the Mayan culture, students of Mayan origin, who are the majority in Guatemala, really. And you have that in your student body.
We have a very aggressive scholarship program where we try to find those kids who are very talented in the countryside, and very often there are kids that do not have even shoes, but if they are intelligent kids and they are motivated kids, we try to bring them to the university, and we give them we give them an environment. We have to give them an environment. Not only, it's not enough with covering the tuitions.
Yeah.
So you need to give them a place to live,
room and board.
Room and board, but also you need even to give them a lot of psychological support and also economic support enough that they can send money to their families, because otherwise the families will try to get them back.
Want them to work. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
And in your other existence, you're a very famous economist in Spain. And when I was reading some of your material, some of your papers, you debunked, now everybody knows this to some extent, but you were one of the first to analyze it, to show that green jobs cost more jobs than they create because of the subsidy structure. So I'll let you tell the story. You analyzed, there were a lot of green jobs in Spain with solar farms and so on. And what were your conclusions?
Well, we look at it, and we saw that so many subsidies were going into the creation of green jobs. So we said, let's calculate. Let's see how many green jobs are we really creating and how much does it cost? And where does this money come from? So the money was coming obviously from subsidies that the government was taking out of the economy and placing it there because they thought this was a good investment or whatever, or redistribution, and that it would create many jobs. What we saw is that if you take the amount of investment that was not invested anymore in the rest of the economy, and how many jobs were created, for every job that you created, you were destroying 2.2 jobs. So in fact, you were destroying a lot of jobs. And since Obama said that he wanted to copy the Spanish model for the U.S., we came out with studies showing that was if the idea was to create jobs, it was a very bad idea. We would be destroying jobs by copying the Spanish model. It was very polemic at the time. It raised a lot of controversy, and but after some years, at the beginning, as you said, well, we were almost alone. Very few people. It was like
An unpopular point.
Very unpopular. But after a few years, even the Spanish government had to recognize that there were mistakes, that we were right in that, and they rolled back the regulation. And the Obama administration didn't pass its own regulations. So.
Yeah, and indeed, I suppose it's because everybody likes things that are green and clean. That's normal. That's good, per se. But it's how you get there.
Exactly, you know? Exactly. I always tell my students, since I have been teaching applied economics to the environment, or environmental economics, and I always told my students, look, we should not discuss who loves the environment more, because I really love the environment, and you too, I'm sure you too. What we have to discuss is how do we achieve a sustainable world. And I'm completely convinced, after researching, not before, after researching it a lot, I'm completely convinced that the best way is through the market. Capitalism and free markets is the best ally of the environment.
And are we reaching the point, some people say we are, in your view, are we reaching the point where it is profitable to be in the green economy, therefore capitalism will begin to work?
Oh yes, oh yes. If people demand that, and the richer society is, the more people demand that kind of green products, the more provision you will have of that kind of products. And you see this and capitalism itself, through the markets, starts producing the type of technology that other countries will start copying and making their economies cleaner. And it's a process that we see everywhere. When we look at the treaties, the environmental treaties, you see always that clean air and water. You see that the developed countries immediately say, yes, we want to sign this. Where do we have to sign? The poor countries have more troubles in signing that, because once you have a rich economy and you have the technology to be clean, and you have the productivity, and your people are eating well, people start thinking about that kind of things. And the free market is very fast in providing a clean environment.
And I can't resist asking you, even though you're in Guatemala, the very socialistic regimes, anti-free market of Venezuela, Bolivia, Cuba, Ecuador, they all seem to be, from where we're sitting, they're all failing. Venezuela is a spectacular failure. Do young Latin Americans, like your students, recognize that? Do they talk about it?
Oh yes, a lot. Our students for sure, but I think most of the students in Latin America discuss that. I think it's hard to hide the fact that Venezuela was one of the richest countries in the world. And after a couple of decades of socialist experiment, it has been doing what socialist countries usually do, or socialist planned economies have been doing for 100 years or more. That is going down and down and down. They have destroyed the beautiful things they had created for many, many years. And you can see this in Ecuador, you can see this in Bolivia. It's a disaster, because the top-down approach to society is a very damaging approach. The bottom-up approach, where people are allowed to create, to collaborate, to work together into whatever their goals are, this is an approach that works, because people are driven by their motivations, by their passions, and through their interaction, they show the value of things for them. And this allows to construct together, to collaborate. The top-down approach, whether it is socialist or right-wing, doesn't work. And the more complexity you have in society, the less it works, or the more catastrophic it is.
And it only works if you happen to be lucky and have some oil, like Venezuela. But even there, depending on natural resources, has proven not to be a solution.
Oh, you consume all your natural resources very, very easily. To have natural resources is very important if you have a society in which those natural resources can be of value. If you have a system where it's producing negative value, whatever resources you put into that, it's like throwing them away.
Yeah, really wasting them.
Yeah.
And do the is there still? I lived long ago in Latin America, but in El Cono Sur, in Chile and Argentina and so on. There was a lot of nationalism in those days among the different countries. They were all very proud of their, their economy, their politicians, their stars, movie stars. And the next guy, the Chileans would talk against the Argentinians, and the Uruguayans would talk against the Argentinians, and the Argentinians talk against the Brazilians. Has that rivalry, is it still around, or has it mellowed out?
It is still around. You also have to consider that what has happened, for example, to Argentina. It was one of the top 10 countries in the world a century ago. That also because of interventionism from the right and from the left has been going steadily down and down and down. Makes their neighbors change the way they look at them. So these rivalries still exist, but they exist. Sometimes they look up and sometimes they look down.
And Hernando de Soto, obviously you'd be very familiar with him. We've had him on the show. He made a big point of the difference between power in the third world, or the lesser or the developing world. The difference between those who would make it and those who wouldn't is often something as simple as rule of law with the deeds to property. That if a country recognizes that, overnight you can change the value of the whole city and people can start trading and so on. Where is Latin America today with that?
There has been a lot of progress in the last years and last decades in that regard. I think we might be in front of a revolution in that sense, because blockchain and other technologies too will allow people, organizations, society to reveal the property that already exists, that might not be official.
That's right.
And in that way, this could be a revolution, a revolutionary step forward.
And how about printing money? Because that was a sport in South America when I lived there. And in Buenos Aires, if you went to the bank to change dollars, they had to have a blackboard with chalk, because it would change every 15 minutes, and they would wipe off and then you'd wait there to see what you were going to get for your dollars and so on. Printing money has often been an easy solution for Latin Americans. Chavez used it. Is it now discredited, or is it still in use?
Well, printing money has been an easy solution for politicians all around the world.
Yes, of course.
even in the U.S. It is true that in Latin America there has been several episodes of hyperinflation because of printing a lot of money. You have also examples of the contrary. You have examples like Guatemala, for example, where just with a couple of regular laws, you completely change the weakness of or transform the weakness of the currency into the strength of the currency. For example, in Guatemala, two laws. One was the freedom of currency, so you can do your contracts and your payment in whatever currency you want. There's no legal tender. And the second one is the fact that the government the central bank cannot monetize the debt of the government. These two laws has made the quetzal a very, very stable currency. So in Latin America, yes, you have some populists, again from the left and from the right, that have been using the printing machine to pay for their high expenses. But you have also examples of countries that have been tremendously stable. In fact, the Bank of Guatemala, every month they have a very open meeting with key people in society, explaining why they took the decisions they took the day before. And one of the things they usually say is that, unfortunately, because the Federal Reserve is having this expansionary policy, we are forced to move a little bit in their direction. So you have also very good examples in Latin America.
Did I hear you right? The quetzal, is that named after the bird?
Yes, exactly.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful name for a currency. It's like if we had hummingbirds instead of dollars.
Yes.
It would be quite poetic.
Yes, you're right. And Adam Smith had a very nice metaphor about flying and metal wings and the currency.
Well, Gabriel Calzada, your school sounds like the kind of school I would have liked to go to, but maybe I'll pay a visit someday. So long life to you and to Francisco Marroquin.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Gabriel Calzada was our guest this week on Free Markets, the Walter series of The World Show. I'm Bob Scully. Have a great week. Thanks.